Adolf Hitler is remembered as a dictator, a warlord, and the architect of unprecedented destruction. But behind the political machinery and the brutality was a human being, shaped by trauma, national collapse, and a lifelong fascination with myths and mythical ideas he never fully understood. This is the story of a man caught between reality and the myths he wanted to believe in. Before Hitler was a dictator, he was a struggling young Austrian who felt directionless and rejected. Some biographers described him as isolated, resentful, imaginative, and deeply insecure. He devoured books on Germanic legends, nationalist myths, and heroic sagas, not out of magic seeking, but because these stories gave his life a sense of shape and purpose. To someone who feels powerless, the idea of destiny is comforting. This is where Hitler's interest in the mythical begins. Not with dark rituals, but with a young man searching for the meaning in stories larger than himself. Post-World War I Germany was a chaotic landscape for political extremists, spiritual movements, and occult revival. Groups like the Thule Society mixed nationalism and mysticism, folklore, and other theories about ancient races and lost civilizations. Hitler didn't join these groups as a practicing occultist, but he absorbed the symbolism, the mythology, and more importantly, the certainty they projected. To a man who felt adrift, these ideas offered identity, purpose, belonging, and an explanation of Germany's collapse. This wasn't magic. This was psychological. When Hitler did rise to power, he surrounded himself with people who believed far more deeply in the supernatural than he did. Heinrich Himmler was immersed in runes, paganism, reincarnation, and Germanic mysticism. He remade Wewelsburg Castle into a symbolic spiritual center for the SS. Rudolf Hess was obsessed with astrology, numerology, and cosmic destiny. And Karl Marie Willigut, a self-proclaimed seer and Germanic oracle, whose visions heavily influenced SS Luhr. Together, they created the mystic aesthetic of the Third Reich, not because Hitler was a magician, but because imagery and symbolism were powerful political tools. But these men also pushed the fringe theories, archaeological obsessions, and rituals that blurred the lines between ideology and mysticism. This is where the darker rumors began. The Nazis launched expeditions through the Ahnenerbe, a real SS research division to explore Tibet, Antarctica, Iceland, the Middle East, and Europe's ancient sacred sites. Their missions combined archaeology, racial pseudoscience, folklore, and nationalistic myth. Conspiracy theorists later added the Spear of Destiny, hidden Atlantean knowledge, hollow earth entrances, virile energy, and searches for the Holy Grail. Historically, much of these claims were exaggerated or unverified, but they reveal an important truth. Hitler wanted scientific validation for his worldview. His circle wanted mystic validation, and the world ended up with a tangled hybrid of both. Hitler was not the dark sorcerer some legends painted him as. He wasn't entirely skeptical either. He believed in fate, destiny, and the power of symbolism, in the historical myth of the chosen Germanic people, and in the idea that history works through special individuals. He often described moments from his life as if guided by forces beyond him, not supernatural forces necessarily, but a sense of inevitability. To a man who had repeatedly failed in his youth, this belief provided relief, purpose, and justification. It made him feel like his rise was not random, but necessary. Again, not magic, but human psychology. Inside the SS, however, things were a lot stranger. Some officers conducted symbolic ceremonies, rune rituals, pseudo-historical reenactments, and spiritual gatherings at Wewelsburg. But were these truly occult rituals? Some were ceremonial nationalism, some were genuine mystical belief, and some were attempts to create a new mythology for Germany. Hitler himself often dismissed their mystical extremism in private, but allowed it because it strengthened loyalty and created the illusion of a sacred mission. He may not have believed in magic, but he understood the power of myth. Based on historical evidence, psychological profiles, and the web of occult theories around him, here is a natural conclusion. Hitler wasn't trying to open magical portals or summon ancient beings, but he was trying to rewrite the world according to the mystic narrative he believed he belonged to. He saw himself as a man of destiny, chosen by history, validated by symbolic meaning, and backed by a mixture of ideology, nationalism, and romanticized ancient lore. His interest in the occult was not about supernatural power. It was about identity, a way to make sense of his place in a chaotic world. And in that human need for significance, combined with unchecked power, he caused destruction far more real than any myth. Hitler's true plan was not mystical conquest. It was psychological fulfillment. He wanted the whole world to reflect the narrative he created in his own mind. A narrative shaped by trauma, myth, ideology, and the seductive certainty of destiny. When that personal narrative collided with global power, the result was catastrophic. Hitler's relationship with the occult is not a tale of magic. It's a tale of belief, and of what happens when personal mythology becomes national policy. Understanding it does not diminish his crimes. It does not humanize him into sympathy. It humanizes him into clarity, because the most dangerous people in history's mysteries are rarely monsters from the start. They are humans who believe their own stories too deeply and force the world to play along.